Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming off the back of an international break. We're playing Burnley at 3 o'clock on Saturday. Most of our boys have had some sort of international say over the last week. The England boys on Tuesday night, Phil Foden played 90 minutes. John Stones also played. John Stones played both England games. I'd say that that's healthy and unhealthy in some ways. John Stones getting some minutes in his legs, which is a great thing. Phil Foden, I would have been happier if he didn't play the full 90 minutes, but that's just me because I want Phil Foden to play every minute of his career in a Manchester City shirt. Gentlemen, do you want to just quickly sum up the international games? Because I believe that Ferran Torres played the other night and had a cracker. Did anyone get injured? Any injury news from the international break?
As far as I'm aware, there is no injuries. Thankfully, Rodri and Torres came off the other night, but it was thankfully no injuries, and there don't seem to be any injuries coming out of the England game. It's like you said, it's a shame that 4 of our players played most of the games. Bit of a shame, but onwards and upwards. Kevin De Bruyne seems fit as well after playing some part in the Belgian game. So thankfully, touch wood, there are no injuries going into the game on Saturday afternoon.
Right, so 3 o'clock Saturday, Burnley. We're at home, I hope.
Yeah,
because I'll be turning up, and I hope that it's at home anyway. Burnley, over the years, go back to Division 2, give them a good spanking years ago. We've given them a few good spankings over the years in the Premier League. We've had some squeaky bum fixtures against them in the Premier League also. We've even had a fixture that nearly got rained off when we were about 6-0 up. A couple of years, Martin's thinking back, yeah, he's realised that I'm right about that one. Yep. We had a game at Turf Moor that was decided by an Aguero goal that nobody believed he scored until the football technology took over, which was great news for us. We had a 1-1 draw against them in recent years. At the Etihad, though, we seem to do pretty well against Burnley. They're never really a team that offers much resistance after 20-30 minutes. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts going into it?
Well, we've smashed them 5-0 the last 3 times, going for another record because no other team's won 4 games in a row against the same team by 5 clear goals. So another record City could go after. But Burnley, going all the way back to the Sean Goater 6-0 in the Patrick Vieira goals at Turf Moor. Burnley seem to be a very favourable team for ourselves. We seem to get our goal tally up. Raheem Sterling generally bags hat-tricks. Rodri seems to play man of the match. Burnley just seems to be one of them teams where we totally enjoy playing them and they hate playing us completely.
So we hope not to have egg on our face on Saturday evening then when we're doing a post-match. But Martin, I get from what you're saying that you're feeling this could be a little bit of a Norwich and Arsenal 5-0 affair. Would that be fair to say? Yes,
it's just the international breaks the thing that worries me. That's the only thing that I'm a little bit, concerned about is coming out of internationals. It all depends on the players.
Do you think we'll see a different City starting lineup because of that? Do you think John Stones, like for example, because it is Burnley at home, do you think John Stones will come into the lineup? Because John Stones, as we all know, traditionally, sort of needs 1 or 2, maybe 3 games to get up to speed. But Burnley might be the optimum time to bring him into the fold for that one. Rich, what do you reckon, mate?
I think Pep will be spending the time with the medics, to be honest, to look at who's going to play. Jesus and Ederson are possibly not getting back till the morning of the game. There's talk they were going to get in late Friday night or, midnight or something, or get in Saturday morning. There's a lot of players who've played international football. So I suspect the first thing that will be done is just a decision on who is fit, who's ready to go, who's tired from international. So I think there may be a few changes, possibly.
So maybe you'd expect to see Scott Carson, an extreme example, might get a go, or Riyad Mahrez instead of Gabby Jesus.
You say that, but I believe Zach Steffen is also on international duty and is also playing Wednesday or Thursday in the US. So Steffen's probably only getting back within 24 hours. As a keeper, Pep will always try and pay Ederson. So as long as he's had a kip on the plane, I think Ederson is likely to get a start. But I think, Gabby J might well get.
Well, Ederson's got ADHD anyway, so surely an ADHD tired Ederson might be a bit of a wobble.
Well,
Can't descend.
and that's the thing. And there's been a lot of foot. Laporte played a couple of big games, and Torres too. So in a way, I'd like to see Torres and Stones capitalising on their performances internationally and coming in and getting some game time. But I really think it will be a sitting down, and it will be an attempt to play as close to the Liverpool side as we can.
So you really think he's not going to twist? You really think he's going to stick and not twist? So you don't even think that, for example, did Fernandinho travel, for example? Because Fernandinho would be an easy replacement for Rodri if Fernandinho travelled.
Yeah, he didn't travel. And if Rodri isn't 100, if Rodri's at 85, 90%, then Fernandinho will play.
Ryan, Ozzy, your thoughts?
After his recent comments saying there needs to be more substitutions, teams, the Premier League needs to look after the players, I think that he may have to kind of start looking after his own players, and I think we will see a slightly weakened side. We are going to probably see the likes of Fernandinho come in, probably Riyad Mahrez. I think the likes of Gabby Jesus will probably given a rest.
Is that not just a little bit of Pep Guardiola hyperbole? Or is it? Do you think there's some more legitimacy to his words this time?
I just think with this run of games that we've had, we've talked about it recently in our last video, saying we've had a really tough fixture. We're playing Chelsea, Liverpool, and I think it's now we've got a bit of an easier run. So I think Pep can look at this as an opportunity to rest some of the bigger players. Especially coming off the back of the international break.
On paper, I absolutely agree that on paper it is an easy run, but these are sort of the games that make or break you as a champion, aren't they?
Southampton.
If you can pass the really big tests, then being switched on for the lesser tests is what makes the difference. So
yeah, but Burnley have got a reason to fight. They're currently languishing 18th position, sorry, and they're hitting the relegation point where they need to kind of really start winning some games. But realistically, Sean Dyche going to be coming into this going, we can get something out of this. We can spank City. I don't think so. The most that Burnley
I don't know about that. I don't know whether Sean Dyche has ever said the words, we can spank City. Mate, you might listen. You might be right, Ozzy. You might be right that Sean Dyche has targeted this game for let's try and upset the apple cart, or he might have said that this game is a write-off. So, Ryan.
Yeah, well, when you look at our record against Burnley, as Martin almost said, it's 4 5-0 wins on the bounce at home against them. So we're going for 5 in a row, not 4 in a row. But I think Burnley's a game that should be fairly routine. I think you will see a bit of variety from the squads that have played the last couple of games. I think Torres will be back in the starting 11, which he's been missing the last couple of games, which is why I put him in my fantasy team. I think you could see Stones starting again and maybe a bit of rotation in midfield. We are coming into a more favourable run of fixtures than we've been going through, so I think this is probably the time where you will start to see a couple bits of rotation, as you can maybe afford to drop a couple of players here and there.
I've got a question for you all. Jack Grealish, do you stick or twist? Because it's an easier run of fixtures, is this going to be favourable for Jack Grealish to sort of maybe alter his style of play, come inside? Is this going to be an easy way to blood Jack Grealish into the team? Because let's face it, we bought Jack Grealish in and he's played our hardest games. Now, he's not been great. I don't think we can sugarcoat that. He's not been great, but maybe this is the better way to get his confidence levels up and stuff like that by bringing him in, or sticking with him at least, and seeing what he can do against these so-called lesser teams. What do you all think about that?
I don't think he's been poor, though, if I'm honest. I don't think he's been... I think he's had a relatively not a bad start to his City career. Obviously, he hasn't set the City world alight, but I think saying he's been poor, I think that's a bit harsh.
Yeah, I think Ozzy, I think the reason why he gets that is that Foden came in and had 2 amazing games, and I think people were quite pleased with Jack Grealish until Foden played in that position. So I think he's suffering from that.
Yeah, but you have to you have to remember he's only just coming to this team. You know, Foden has been playing with this team for a lot longer period. You know, and that's not just at first team level. That's been behind the scenes before he got regular first team action. So Jack Grealish is still finding these legs. I think we've all agreed that he's playing out of position. So this may be the opportunity, like Rob said, that he can play maybe in the right position where he can play in that attacking, mid role where he can actually maybe do a lot more damage than he's been doing on the left.
But I think the question Rob asked, you could make exactly the same point for Sterling. Sterling has apparently had a heart-to-heart sit down with Pep. Pep's, suggested that he is going to play more through the middle, and Raz has said he's going to knuckle down and focus on playing through the middle. So there's another, Torres should be coming in. There's conversation that Sterling should maybe play in there. We're looking at moving Grealish. I think there's a huge.
Well, this is the argument, isn't it? Because listen, without forget the international break. Let's just say that everyone's been in Manchester for the last week and nobody's had long flights or anything like that. It'd be hard to say that you put anyone other than Gabriel Jesus on the right hand side. It'd be very hard to make an argument for another player over Gabriel Jesus. The player through the middle is where there's the most debate, because that potentially could be Sterling, Torres, or Grealish, in my opinion. The left-hand side, the first name for that has to be Phil Foden. So this is what I'm saying about Jack Grealish, Ozzy. You're saying that I might have a different opinion than you about his quality so far, but when you're picking a team, it's very hard to actually put him in a starting 11 in what would be considered his favourable position, which would be the left-hand side, because that has to be Phil Foden, because he smashed it when he's played there. Gabriel Jesus, right-hand side, smashed it when he's been there.
It depends on if Grealish plays. Not Grealish, sorry. I think it depends on if Mahrez plays. Because I think there is a chance against Burnley that Mahrez will start on that right-hand side.
I think yes, because of the international break, yes. Because of the travel, yes.
It changes, and I think that there's a chance that Grealish could play in midfield. Whereas if Mahrez doesn't play, you may see Grealish off the left and Foden on the right rather than on the left.
But Mahrez has been with internationals as well, with Algeria.
It's a different it's a different kettle of fish travel-wise, though, isn't it? It's still a long flight,
but I see Mahrez just bagging 2 goals then just the team for another.
Careful. I get what everyone's saying about it's a favourable fixture, but I just keep going back to the Southampton game. I really do. And to me, I don't think there will be that many changes. Because like Rich said...
Well, this is where we find out whether the Southampton game was a blip or not, don't we? Let's be honest, this is where we find that out.
No offence to Burnley, Martin, but they're not Southampton. Burnley are in a really poor position. They've been going down the league for the last few seasons now. They're pretty much, they could be going out and back into the Championship the way they're going. So I'm not thinking Burnley are suddenly going to be our big boogie team to come along.
That's true as well, because Southampton did something that other teams don't do, and that's attack us. I don't see Burnley attacking us. I don't, Rob. They don't have the capability. They don't have the players to attack us. They have the players
sit back
to hold out and be resilient, and that's up to us to break them down. But they don't have the players to attack us.
Yeah, they'll sit back and they'll just make it hard for us to break them down, as you've said. We're just it's going to be wave upon attack. And for City, it's just taking our chances, isn't it? Because we've just not been clinical enough.
I think with the way Burnley play as well, I think that's another reason as to why I think Stones might play over Laporte. I think Stones will be probably better in the air and a bit more physical up against, say, Chris Wood and Ashley Barnes.
That's a good shout, yeah, absolutely. Do we know anything more about Zinchenko yet? Or is Zinchenko still a missing man?
No, he's been posting pictures all over Instagram with his new baby. That's all we know. And he's been on the treadmill doing things like that. So that's all we know. There's been no news.
Might we see Kyle Walker rested? Cancelo plays right back. Is Nathan Ake got a shout for this game?
No.
No.
You got to remember, we've also got the West Ham game coming up. So we've got the Carabao Cup where some of these can go in as well. So I don't. I just me personally, I don't think it'll be as rotated as what maybe one or two people think it is. I generally don't, because if you look at the last few games, Pep's done something we generally haven't. He hasn't done in the last 2 or 3 years. Pep's teams, you were finding it very hard to predict his 11. If you look over the last 3 or 4 games, ever since, I think we talked about it on the review, he's generally stuck with this 11 now.
Yeah.
And consistency breeds confidence. So for me, I would generally, I don't like Rich said, Edison, I think will be fine. You know, whether we get the private jet out and we bring Edison and Gabby back on the private jet, get them back quicker, that is a possibility. We've done it before.
Sure.
For those players.
Keeping fringe players happy is important, though, which is why I do fully expect to see Riyad Mahrez play. I really do.
agree with you, but I think with the West Ham game coming up, I think that will be key. I think if we didn't have the West Ham game so close to this, then maybe one or two.
The argument can be made, and I'll make it right now. We've got to give Riyad Mahrez game time in the Premier League because that's how we're going to get the most amount of money for him in January to Newcastle. So, Rich, what are you saying?
I think that Pep will have an 11 in his mind, of which I think 10. I think if we were starting a big game tomorrow, there are 10 players who would be in that team, and the only position that would be in doubt would be that false 9 position. Because I think, but I don't think Jesus will play on Saturday. I think he'll be rested, and I think possibly a couple more will be rested on the advice of the medics. Mahrez, you talk about world records. Mahrez, I think, has just got his 12th goal in 11 games, and Algeria is not lost in 31, 32 games. They're only about, in the AFCON second game, they can break the world record if they keep going in that form.
They'll win over Niger in the last game.
What about...
Above all, I'd like to see Torres start. If I was going to pick one player who could start, it would be Torres, confident from, that first game against Spain, and in a good game, even in the second game, coming in and giving that number 9 a go, because he's the one who I thought started to show promise in a couple of games at the beginning of the season and then disappeared for the big games. But I'd like to see him back.
That goes back to my argument about Jack Grealish, that it's sort of Ferran Torres for me got dropped to accommodate Jack Grealish a little bit, but now that Phil Foden's back and firing, that means that Jack Grealish has to make way if you want to play Ferran Torres. And regardless of what Ozzy's saying about his love affair with the guy with the floppy hair, Ferran Torres for me starts in this team before Jack Grealish. Now, does that mean that you bump Jack Grealish into the midfield? Okay, so that means Jack Grealish is then competing against Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne. For me, for my money, Kevin De Bruyne, I'd like to see him rested for a couple of these games. I would like to see Kevin De Bruyne get a rest for about 3 out of these next 6 games.
Yeah.
So that's Jack Grealish's opportunity, maybe.
And that's why I said that's why he needs to be put into that, that midfield. And you're right. I think Kevin De Bruyne does need a rest. I think, he's been on international duty as well. He's been played pretty much for the full matches. So I think he was laggy when he was with us for the last few games. It would just be a great opportunity to put Jack in his right position and to put Ferran Torres up front of that false 9.
And there'll be that question, like, De Bruyne looks like he needs a rest, and I'm assuming that he is fatigued, but someone like Foden, they may think needs the football because coming back from injury.
Give Foden the minutes no matter what. No matter what, give Foden the minutes.
Yeah, and De Bruyne, and that's the hard thing with De Bruyne, is he fatigued or is he just not match fit because he's not had a pre-season? So that they'll know whether De Bruyne needs more football to get him sharp or whether he needs rest to get him sharp, and that's what we don't know, and they'll have to rely on. It might
go back to that statement, Rich. The statement of, I would never have had those injections if I knew the long-term damage it would have done to my ankle. So
it must be partly that. Must be.
Well, that's what we said a couple of weeks ago, and you could tell he was playing in pain. You could tell. because he wasn't moving, he wasn't flowing around the pitch like he normally does. Kevin De Bruyne, generally, I know we say he has a role or a position, should I say, but if you look, he does tend to float around. He play very much like David Silva used to do. Float around anywhere. You know, you'd find David on the right, the left, or in the middle, and Kevin De Bruyne tended to do the same. But he hasn't done that recently because I don't think he's got the legs, or at the moment, I don't think he's got the fitness. Simply because some idiot, as the Belgian manager, decided to risk him in the Euros.
We went through the same thing with Vincent Kompany a couple of years ago, Martin. It's just the Belgium.
And the scary thing is, though, he's at the age now where these injuries are neglect and they don't go away that easy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Well, let me just go on then to wrap this up. Then, I'm Mr. Fence Sitter this week because it's either going to be 1-0 or 6-0. I can't make my mind up which. What do you gentlemen think?
I don't think it'll be as a rollover as what we probably think.
So you're more in line with my first answer then of 1-0.
I'm going 2-0. I'm going 2-0.
As someone who, lives and works with data, I've got a trend here: 5-0, 5-0, 5-0, 5-0. It's very hard to go against that trend, so it's got to be 5-0.
Yeah, Rich, that's why the stock market never collapses, mate. You're right, completely. Everything's always consistent. Everything's always consistent.
No, 5-0's not going up, it's staying steady.
Ryan and Ozzy?
I agree with Rich. I'm going to say 5-0. I think Mahrez will get a goal. I think chances are Torres might get 1 or 2 as well. So I think of the players that you're going to maybe rotate into the squad, they'll have decent games. It's just whether they can, A, keep that starting position, and then B, keep up that form.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a bit of in between, really. I don't think it'll be a storming romp, but I don't think it's going to be a 1-0. I think you're looking at probably a 4-0 to City. I think with the changes that are going to come in, it won't be a fully balanced team, especially after the international break as well. So I feel for me, it's not going to be a complete storm, but I think you're looking at about a 4-0.
The thing that has me most worried is that me and Martin are the most closely aligned on this one, and that's never happened ever. So I'm terrified now that we're going to lose 6-0.
Well, no, it's not. You two could never make a prediction again.
Not that. These three are like the fans sat in the Etihad. 20 minutes gone, 0-0. Right, you're crap. Get off.
I'm going home. I'm getting some chips. I can't be bothered. We're not winning 7-0.
20 minutes. I want him subbed off. Get Sterling on.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you all again. I'll speak to you all soon.